On September 4, 2019, a 6-person search and rescue team deployed into the Bitterroot Wilderness at 600 hours. Their target, a missing elk hunter, last pinged at GPS coordinate 45.8741 N, 114.2983 W. A ridge corridor 11 miles from the nearest trailhead, elevation 7,200 feet. Weather was clear. Wind from the northwest at 6 miles per hour. No meteorological reason for what happened next. By 1340 hours, all 4 radios in the team went dead. Not weak signal, not static, dead. 2 Motorola APX 6000s, 1 Kenwood NX 5400, 1 ICOM IC F9111. All different frequencies, all different manufacturers, all failed within a 6-minute window in the same half-mile corridor. The team's tracker, a man named Leonard Doore, did not look surprised. He had been moving slower than the others since they crossed the second creek. When the last radio failed, he stopped walking. He turned north. He looked at the ridgeline for 11 seconds. Then he said, "We need to talk about where we are." That statement was not recorded in the official Ravalli County incident report. Leonard told it directly to camera 18 months after the event. He agreed to speak on record for one reason. 2 more teams had since entered that corridor. Both lost radio contact in the same zone. One team member was found 2 miles from camp with no memory of leaving his tent. Leonard Doore is not a storyteller. He's a working professional. He is Crow Nation, born in Hardin, Montana in 1967. He completed his first solo backcountry traverse at age 14 under the instruction of his grandfather, a man who had guided in the Bitterroot since the 1940s. Leonard went on to earn a wildlife biology degree from Montana State University in 1991. He spent 9 years as a field coordinator with Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, conducting ungulate surveys across 5 wilderness designations.
He has since worked as a private guide for 27 years, logging an estimated 12,000 backcountry miles in the state of Montana alone. He has no documented history of exaggeration. His incident reports are known in ranger circles for their clinical precision. One Ravalli County deputy described his testimony style as like reading a federal brief. Leonard does not use the word creature. He does not describe what lives in the Bitterroot corridor in visual terms. He describes it the way a structural engineer describes a fault line, as a system, with behaviors, with logic, with conditions under which it activates. His grandfather taught him the name for it in Crow. He will not say that name on camera. He will say this: the presence in that corridor has been documented in Crow oral record for more than 200 years. It predates the Lewis and Clark expedition. It predates contact. It was not invented to explain the unexplainable. It was cataloged the same way his grandfather cataloged elk migration patterns, by observation, repetition, and the painful cost of ignoring it. He entered that corridor on September 4th knowing 2 things. First, that it was active territory. Second, that he had a professional obligation to complete the mission. He reconciled those facts the same way he always did, carefully, with a specific set of rules in his head that he had never written down, because writing them down would require explaining them to people who would not believe the explanation. He broke none of those rules on September 4th. Someone else did. That is what he wanted to discuss. The first indicator appeared at 0847 hours, approximately 90 minutes after the team crossed into the upper drainage. The birds stopped, not gradually, between one footfall and the next. Leonard noticed it and said nothing. He began a mental count, timing the silence the way a diver times oxygen consumption. At 3 minutes, he noted it in his field log.
At 7 minutes, he noted it again. The entry reads, "Avian absence, corridor entry confirmed." The second indicator was the wind. Montana backcountry wind follows terrain in predictable patterns when weather is stable. In a north-facing drainage at 7,000 feet with a northwest prevailing wind, airflow should funnel downslope. It was moving upslope, not dramatically, not in a gust, in a steady, quiet reversal that had no meteorological cause. Leonard's grandfather had a specific phrase for this condition in Crow. The closest English translation is, "the air is listening." The third indicator was the smell. No definable source, not decomposition, not sulfur, not any game animal Leonard could identify in 30 years of fieldwork. He described it as a mineral quality, like the interior of a cave system, combined with something organic he could not categorize. It lasted approximately 4 minutes, then it stopped. He noted all 3 indicators without alerting the team. His reasoning was operational. Panic in that corridor, he had been taught, was a greater immediate threat than the presence itself. The presence, in his experience and in the oral record he had been given, did not behave randomly. It responded to behavior: sudden noise, sudden movement, fire above a specific elevation, and one thing in particular that his grandfather had been very specific about. He was still cataloging indicators when the radios began to go. The first radio that failed belonged to team leader Mark Bressler. He reported it at 13:34 hours. The display went dark. Batteries showed full charge 3 minutes prior. He switched to the backup channel. No signal. He attempted a manual frequency scan. The unit produced a single tone at a frequency he described as low, almost subsonic, before going completely silent. Leonard heard that tone from 12 feet away. He recognized it immediately. He did not say so at the time. By 1340, all 4 units had produced the same tone and gone silent.
The team's 2 GPS devices continued functioning. Compasses functioned. The satellite messenger device belonging to team member Andrea Voss showed full connectivity on its display, but transmitted nothing. She attempted 9 check-ins over the following 40 minutes. None were received at the base station. When the incident report was filed, a Ravalli County communications technician examined all 4 radios. He found no hardware failure, no battery failure, no damaged components. His written conclusion was, cause of signal loss undetermined. He noted that the failure pattern was, in his words, inconsistent with any known electromagnetic interference source. He recommended the units be tested at altitude in the same general area. That recommendation was never acted upon. Leonard had a different explanation for the tone. He had heard it twice before. Once in 1998, in the same drainage. Once in 2007, 12 miles north of that location, in a separate corridor that the Crow Nation had historically avoided for unrelated reasons. On both prior occasions, the tone preceded a change in the behavior of whatever was present in the area. Not escalation, not aggression, a shift in attention. He described it as the difference between something moving past you in the dark and something stopping to face you. Before the team entered the corridor that morning, Leonard had a specific set of behavioral protocols running in the back of his mind. He had never formally named these protocols. They were not written in any guide or field manual. They were transmitted to him the same way everything important was transmitted in his family, orally, specifically, and with the implicit understanding that the alternative to following them had already been demonstrated. No open fire above 6,400 feet in the upper Bitterroot drainage between the 2 forks. The reasoning, as his grandfather explained it, was not superstitious.
Fire at elevation in that corridor produces a column of smoke and light visible from the ridgeline. It marks position. More critically, it marks number. You do not advertise number. No calls after dusk. Human vocalization after dark, particularly in the upper drainage, could be interpreted, he used that word deliberately, as a territorial signal. You do not issue territorial signals in territory that is not yours. No reflective surfaces after midday. This rule was the one Leonard had difficulty translating into logic that would satisfy a skeptic. His grandfather was emphatic about it and offered no functional explanation beyond the statement that reflective surfaces in that specific light attracted attention in the same way that a light source attracts insects, not through malice, through mechanism. No leaving the designated sleep perimeter once it was established after dark. This was the rule that mattered most. This was the rule that had been broken. Team member Craig Sutter had left the perimeter at approximately 2:08 a.m. His tent was zipped closed in the morning. His sleeping bag was arranged to suggest occupation. He was found at 06:14 hours by Leonard during perimeter check, standing on a flat granite outcropping, 220 meters northeast of camp, facing north. He was dressed. He had his boots on. He had no memory of leaving his tent. He was not injured. He was cold. He was confused in the way that people are confused when they are trying to explain something that their brain has not yet processed into language. He said he had heard something. He could not describe the sound. He said it felt important to follow it. Leonard did not record this in the official incident report. He recorded it privately, in a notebook he keeps separate from his professional logs, and he described it on camera with the same precision he applies to everything else. He walked to a specific location, faced a specific direction, and stopped.
Whatever directed him there was either testing the perimeter or had already made a decision about us. The thermal imaging incident occurred at 2:14 a.m., 6 minutes after the estimated time of Craig Sutter's departure from the perimeter. Leonard had been awake. He sleeps in 90-minute cycles in the backcountry, a habit acquired over decades and refined to the point of biological precision. He had been sitting outside his tent, eyes adjusted to darkness, monitoring the tree line with a FLIR Scout thermal monocular. The mass appeared at the upper ridge line, approximately 340 meters from camp. It registered as thermal positive, body heat, but its edges did not resolve. On a thermal unit at that range, a bear presents as a defined shape with coherent outlines. An elk presents the same way. What Leonard saw had no coherent outline. The thermal signature blurred at its perimeter, as if the boundary between the mass and the surrounding air was not fixed. It moved laterally along the ridgeline for approximately 4 minutes. The movement was not the movement of a quadruped. It was not the movement of a biped either. Leonard described it as flowing, not the word he wanted, but the closest available. It stopped twice. Both times it stopped, it was facing camp. Leonard lowered the monocular. He made a decision. He did not wake the team. He sat still, made no sound, controlled his breathing, and waited. In that moment, he said, he was operating entirely within the framework his grandfather had given him. You do not challenge it. You do not run. You demonstrate that you understand where you are and that you are not a threat. You wait. The mass remained on the ridgeline for 11 more minutes. Then the thermal signature dimmed and disappeared. Not moved away, dimmed, as if whatever it was had reduced its body temperature or moved into a position the unit could not read. He did not sleep again that night. The morning protocol was extraction. Leonard had decided before dawn.
The mission objective, locating the missing hunter, was superseded by what he assessed as an unacceptable risk environment. He had a team member who had left the perimeter without awareness. He had an unidentified thermal presence that had monitored the camp. He had a communication blackout. Each of these individually was manageable. Together, they met the threshold his grandfather had described as the point at which the corridor is no longer negotiating. He briefed the team at 0445. He gave them a partial explanation. Equipment failure, compromised member, extraction protocol. He did not describe the thermal incident. He did not describe what he believed was tracking them. He set a pace and a route. The route he chose was not the path of least resistance. It was not the logical extraction route. He deliberately avoided the main drainage, the open meadow sections, and the ridgeline trail. He moved the team through dense timber, across a boulder field, and along the north bank of the lower creek, adding approximately 90 minutes to the extraction time. None of the team questioned this. They were cold. Craig Sutter had not fully recovered his orientation. They were willing to be led. The paralleling began 40 minutes into extraction. Leonard heard it first. Not footsteps, not branch noise, a displacement of sound, the kind of silence that moves alongside you when something large is matching your pace through heavy timber. He had heard this before in the presence of mountain lion. Mountain lion does not sound like this. Mountain lion stalks through sound cessation. This was different. This was sound management. The difference is subtle and technical, and it matters. One is instinct, the other is choice. He kept the team's pace steady. He issued 3 instructions, quietly, without explanation. Stay within arm's reach of the person ahead. Do not look into the trees on the left side. Do not stop walking for any reason.
The third instruction was violated 14 minutes later. Andrea Voss stopped walking to adjust her pack strap. She was stopped for approximately 8 seconds. During those 8 seconds, the sound alongside them stopped. Not faded, stopped. Clean. Simultaneous with her stop, as if her pause had been a signal received and acknowledged. When she resumed walking, the sound did not resume with her. Leonard did not know in that moment whether the absence of sound was better or worse than the presence of it. He had been taught that silence of that particular quality, not natural quiet, but active, deliberate silence after sustained pacing, indicated a decision had been made. He did not know what the decision was. He kept walking. The team reached the trailhead at 12:47 hours. Total time in the field, 6 hours and 47 minutes. All 6 members were physically intact. Leonard submitted his official incident report to Ravalli County Search and Rescue the following afternoon. It described equipment failure, a disoriented team member, and a precautionary extraction. It was accurate in every fact it contained. It omitted the thermal event, the sound paralleling, and his assessment of the corridor's nature. He filed a separate private account that same evening. He was asked during the debriefing whether he believed the radio failure was related to the terrain. He said it was possible. He was asked whether he would return to that corridor. He said he would not, professionally or personally. He was asked why. He said, "Because I was given a specific education about that location, and I have now confirmed it with direct observation. I don't need a third confirmation."
The Ravalli County Sheriff's Office closed the file as equipment malfunction, inconclusive cause. The missing hunter was located the following week, 7 miles from the original GPS ping, alive, with a twisted ankle and no memory of how he had moved that distance.
Leonard did not consider the file closed. 3 weeks after the incident, Leonard drove to his mother's home in Hardin. He sat with 3 elders, 2 men and a woman, ages ranging from 74 to 89, and he named the corridor. He gave its geographic description, not its English designation. He used the terrain markers his grandfather had taught him as reference points. The response from all 3 elders was the same. Recognition. Not surprise, not fear. Recognition. The oldest of the 3 men nodded and said something in Crow that Leonard translated for camera as, "Yes, that one is still there." The woman elder asked one question. She asked whether anyone in his team had carried a mirror. Leonard said yes. Andrea Voss carried a small signal mirror as standard emergency kit. It had been in her pack the entire time. The elder nodded again. She said nothing else on the subject. Leonard looked at the camera for a moment before speaking his final words on the record. He said, "My grandfather told me that place has been known for longer than anyone now living can confirm. He said the Crow people do not go there, not because of fear, but because they decided a long time ago not to interfere with what lives in that corridor. He said the Americans started going in there in the 1800s because they didn't have that information yet." He paused. "They still don't have it." He turned off the camera himself.